Police have identified and arrested a suspect in the United Healthcare CEO case, and it appears Americans are even more unwell than we thought. After pictures of Luigi Mangione circulated online, his social media accounts swiftly amassed a new following. Last night, Yashar Ali posted on Twitter and said that Luigi now has 137,000 followers on Twitter and over 60,000 followers on Instagram. As of today, those numbers have already more than doubled. How hot is this guy, you might ask? Well, this is his mugshot. The women and the gays are simply losing their minds over this one, and the public thirst trap has pretty much every demographic group crossing its own ideological lines. The left is now okay with pew-pew violence. The women are simping for violent offenders, alleged violent offenders, and the right is lauding him as an intellectual-based heavyweight. So if you're confused, you're not alone. But is this even the slam dunk case the media is reporting it as, at the behest of police, I might add, or are there some untied strings? First, I'm Hannah Cox with Base Politics. Welcome to my channel where I bring you my politically homeless takes on politics and culture. Before we dive in today, make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and of course, ring that notification bell so you never miss one of my episodes. Okay guys, so to set the scene, allow me to show you a little bit more of this digital dehydration station we have going on. Denisha Carter shared a picture of Luigi and said, "That smile looks innocent to me. He has a bright future ahead of him, and it's so unfair that one mistake would ruin it." This meme was circulating all over Twitter and it says, "No, don't get caught by the police. You're so sexy, haha." Here's another one where this big influencer Matt posted 2 photos of Luigi and said, "Oh, ... my God." Another person shared his photo and said, "Now I know why that hostel worker asked him to lower his mask. I present to you the hot assassin, Luigi Mangione." Like, the online salivating has gotten so bad, even the mainstream media is covering it.
And so there's also just the reaction online is also just such a reinforcement of how much aesthetics, attractiveness, I mean, like the shallowness of the American people, the American people who are online, we'll say, is very much on display here. Part of, yes, there's absolutely a bubbling anger about the inequity in the country writ large and in the healthcare system, no question. But so much of the clips we were watching at the top of this segment are driven by the fact that this is an attractive.
We got to drop the banner to show why.
And it is deeply troubling that we are celebrating this person who's committed cold-blooded murder. Yeah. Because, he clearly went to the gym.
I kind of just love when people who think they're serious journalists have to come on and cover this kind of stuff. It's just hilarious to me. I also love that she says there's lots of inequity in the system and people are obviously outraged over that, but have you seen this guy's abs? On Twitter, this person said, "New workout goal is to have a body where after I commit a crime, the media posts my shirtless pics and everyone's like, wow." I mean, hard same. I also loved this person said, "If you're still in line for the Luigi Mangione conjugal visit, stay in line." Like, seriously, are you guys okay? You're not. I already covered the left's unhinged reactions to this case. You can go back and watch that video below, or you can just have this quick refresher from the perpetually unhinged Taylor Lorenz here.
I do believe in the sanctity of life, and I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy, unfortunately, because it feels like...
Serious?
I mean...
Joy in a man's execution?
Maybe not.
Like, I already knew that the left was a bit nutty after watching them grave dance over this guy's death over the past week. But now the rest of you are like catching up to them. Here's this Matt influencer guy again on Twitter, says, "Was a big fan of his work as an assassin, had no idea he was retweeting Peter Thiel and Jonathan Haidt, unfollowing now." Yeah, we'll get to that part in a minute. Another person said, 26 is such a funny age to assassinate a healthcare CEO. Is it? Is it funny? I also saw this meme celebrating, like, a number of people on the left seem to be sharing this, that compared Kyle Rittenhouse to Luigi, and it says their shooters versus our shooters, basically trying to claim that Luigi is like a left-wing activist. He's not, it turns out. But again, I'll circle back to that in a minute. But I also just think this is completely crazy. Kyle Rittenhouse acted in self-defense, right? Like, that has been proven in a court of law. That is why he was found not guilty. And not only was he acting in self-defense, he actually killed some true bad guys, okay? Like, this is not an apples to apples comparison. This guy went on a crazy spree and assassinated someone that he did not know. So the fact that you think this is some sort of gotcha on the right, when really the right's guy in this scenario actually acted justly and Luigi did not, just shows you how cracked their brains are. Far from being some communist crusader, it appears that Luigi actually comes from a very wealthy family and is ideologically somewhere in the Tucker Carlson, Tim Pool, Joe Rogan, bro matrix crowd. Although I would say he seems to be quite a few IQ points ahead of the medium audience member. This guy was valedictorian of his high school. He's a graduate of Penn State, which is considered an Ivy League education. I loved this image. This might be my favorite of the lineup today. Somebody posted his photo, his mugshot next to Donald Trump's mugshot and said the UPenn to prison pipeline. I'm gagged. But really, if you scroll through his social media, it does seem that he is an intellectual. It seems he is pretty well read. I'll give you a few examples. Here he is discussing Tucker Carlson. He says, I should have added some context with that clip. I wasn't trying to contradict you, but rather bolster your point. Tucker is spot on in recognizing that modern architecture kills the spirit. But his very first line, postmodern architecture is designed to demoralize and hurt you, paints the phenomenon as intentional. In the same way that inflation is not intelligently designed to oppress people, neither is modern architecture. It's emergent. Yes, it is oppressive, but that's a fallout of selective pressures to build fast, cheap, irrespective of aesthetics. My point here is that even when people have brilliant insights, they often blatantly get the causation wrong. Modern equivalent of this drought famine was caused by the rain gods, because causation gives people comfort, because the idea that phenomenon are the results of amorphous systems outside of our control is scary. Okay, I 100% agree with him. He actually is getting at the entire gist of my podcast, which is that people need to learn to understand root causes before they can properly address the actual issues and come up with solutions. And his point is that oftentimes those causes are not as intentional as people would like to think they are, because that provides them a sense of control. But have you ever heard another member of Tucker Carlson's audience speak this way? Because it's a first for me. He also posted this on Twitter back in May. It says, this is why Jordan Peterson always bothers me, overcomplicates everything he says aloud, wasting everyone's mental bandwidth and having to decipher it. The best teachers are the best communicators, clear, succinct, simple language. Hear, hear. Could not agree more. Now, another point kind of backing up this guy's intellect is he was apparently a voracious reader and he was very active on Goodreads. Here he is leaving reviews. There were many that he left, but I think the one that stood out to me the most was he reviewed the Unabomber's manifesto, which we're still waiting to hear, one, if he's even actually guilty, if they have the right guy. Okay, I think that's important. But number two, what his actual motivations might be. But if he were acting as many on the left have posited that he was, and seeking revenge against corporations and technology and oppression of people underneath them, it's really interesting to me that this is what he was reading. Because if you're unfamiliar with the Unabomber, he was also very upset about technology and where the world was heading and corporations. There's some overlap here. But again, what his true motivations are, we can only really speculate right now. There has been some interesting theories tossed around. I don't think that this guy is coming from a place of not being able to afford his medical bills and seeking revenge, as many presumed was the case when this incident first happened. Again, he comes from a very wealthy background, seems to have a very privileged education, so that seems unlikely. Others have said that he's had some health troubles of his own. This is according to friends. They basically say that he had said that he had some back pain. He had underwent some spinal surgery in 2023. According to this reporting, the friend said he knew that dating and being physically intimate with his back condition wasn't possible. I remember him telling me that. Clarkson Lawson, who's a friend of mine, quote tweeted that and said, I have a theory that when men go without intimacy for long enough, they become destructive and borderline psychotic. Red pill incels are a prime example. I don't know, just a thought. That to me seems to be the most interesting theory here. It does seem that he basically went MIA about 6 months ago. His friends just have not heard from him until he popped up as the suspect in this case. The speculation doesn't really interest me. Analysis does. And I have to say that so far, based on the facts that we have, I'm not even sure they have the right guy. The facts in this case are very convenient, to say the least. According to police reports, he was spotted at a McDonald's a state away from New York. He was recognized by an employee who then called local police when they showed up to question him. He had a mask on. He seemed very nervous when they asked him if he had been in New York City lately. They then searched him and happened to find a weapon, the very weapon they believe was used, a silencer, which why would you not throw those things into a river? And a little manifesto he was just carrying around on him. Like, I don't know, maybe this guy really is in the throes of some kind of psychotic break, but according to NYPD last week, this was methodically planned. This guy was a genius. He was going to be so tough to catch. And yet he kept these items on him. I posted on Twitter, I said, I guess I'm the only person on here who is less convinced of a person's guilt when cops claim they were found with their manifesto on them. Like, it's just giving 9/11, we found their passports within 24 hours in the midst of burning rubble. You'd have to have a lot more faith in police than I do than to just take that on its face as truth. I also am just really surprised at the overzealousness of the McDonald's employee here, okay? When I'm at a McDonald's, I can't get them to look at me even if I'm on fire. Like, they will do anything to not serve you. And yet this employee recognized this guy with a mask on. I guess I'm impressed. This person on Twitter said Popeye's employees would have helped him hide the weapon. Yeah, he picked the wrong fast food joint, I guess. I've seen many other people also pointing out just how convenient this case seems to be. They were obviously very desperate to get it tied up. Others have pointed out that there is some facial discrepancy between the initial photos we got of the suspect and this guy's mugshot. Kyle Becker said, if the unibrow doesn't fit, you must acquit. And he posted this close-up of the two, his mugshot and then his pictures in New York City when they caught him on the security cameras. I will say they don't quite match, but also, unibrows, I assume, have to be plucked regularly. Maybe his hair grew back in. All of that to say, that's going to be up for the jury to decide. But what we can analyze right now from what we know is society's reaction to this case. And aside from the grave dancing from the left, which I've already covered, there were two dominant reactions. The thirsting, obviously, which I'll circle back to in a minute. But there was also a lot of comparisons, I noticed, to the Jordan Neely and Daniel Penny case, which just wrapped this week in New York City. Now, if you didn't hear, the jury acquitted Penny of criminally negligent homicide after previously deadlocking on the more serious charge of manslaughter. And according to some people, this verdict shows that essentially we care more about Black people than we do white people, and there's two tiers of justice. I would often sometimes agree with that. I do think if you actually dig into the statistics of the criminal justice system, there is definitely evidence of racial bias in some cases and just within the system at large. But what they are trying to compare here is, once again, not an apples to apples comparison. Here someone says, the coverage of Jordan Neely's murder and the killing of the United Healthcare CEO is a prime example of how poverty is used to dehumanize people, while wealth is understood as something that confers humanity upon you. I adamantly disagree. I think what confers humanity on someone is them acting humanely, which Jordan Neely was not and had not been for quite some time. He was a threat to society. He was a menace. He was posing a threat to people when he was subdued. And furthermore, his death was ultimately accidental. Even though the guy was acting in self-defense, he was not trying to actually harm him. He was trying to restrain him. That is very, very different from a situation where you have a guy minding his own business, peacefully walking in the streets, going to work, and being shot down from behind by an assassin. Be so serious. It seems like the Black Lives Matter nonprofits, coifers, are running dry because, man, are they trying to turn this into a martyr situation. This woman, Tiffany Caban, said Jordan Neely deserved better than the violence of being denied access to stable housing and healthcare and then dehumanized for it. Jordan Neely deserved better than the systems that allow for and justify extrajudicial white supremacist violence against Black people. Like, shut up. This had nothing to do with race. This had everything to do with him threatening to harm people on public transportation. I do love now, though, that we have community notes to come behind and check crazy people like this online. She had one added to her post that says, as part of a plea agreement with prosecutors, after he punched a 67-year-old woman in the street in 2021, Jordan Neely was given free access to stable housing and healthcare at a treatment facility in the Bronx. He abandoned the facility after 13 days. Like, Jordan Neely was a victim only of himself and his own choices here, and you really cannot convince me otherwise. Trying to compare these two cases that have virtually nothing in common and making it about race is ridiculous, and it really just dampens the case that these people want to make when it actually does exist in other facets and other cases within the justice system. And you really can tell the people trying to amplify this are slimy. Like, this guy's dad, Jordan Neely's dad, who had nothing to do with him, who abandoned his kid for the majority of his life, even leaving him in foster care after his mother was murdered by a new boyfriend, all of a sudden wants to come out and make the media rounds and try to fundraise and try to be some like activist for civil rights for his son. I loved that Adam B. Coleman called him out in the New York Post and said, where was his father when Neely was abandoned in the foster care system with no one to advocate for him? And why is America being held responsible for Zachary's fatherhood failures? This all day long. As I said, I am so here for the dumping on the deadbeat dads who want to show up and have something to say years later. This dude owes society an explanation for his son, not the other way around. Like, just keep pushing, guys. Keep going. Keep trying to demonize self-defense. See where it gets you. You're not going to win this argument. Okay, but back to the thirsting. Like, we really do have to circle back to that, because what is going on? Obviously, the response to Luigi is not unprecedented. We have seen women and the gays come out in support for other hot felons in the past. Not long ago, you had this guy who actually turned his conviction and his mugshot that went viral from it into superstardom. He became like a top model. He, I think, married and had a baby with a billionaire's daughter. Like, he really, like, he really got ahead off his face, okay? We also saw women in the past who would write love letters to infamous serial killers like Ted Bundy, but I am always deeply unsatisfied with the analysis that I hear over these women's behaviors, which I think is completely unhinged. They are off their rockers. It's actually very, very gross to observe. But typically when I hear this analyzed, I hear people saying that either they feel sorry for these people, they feel sorry for their background, they want to save them, they have some kind of like hero complex or mommy complex. Or people will say that like women are just attracted to the bad guy. They just really like the bad guy. But I just think both of those explanations fall flat. They just don't ring true to me. However, this person's post on Twitter did. They said, murderers and assassins are attractive to women because they are passionate enough to actually do something about it. It's like an oasis in a desert of losers who don't care about anything. RFH quote tweeted him and agreed. She said, golden retriever men, goofballs, criminals, and artists. What do they all have in common? Energy. Men are largely stingy with energy. To them, nothing is really worth doing. They simply refuse to exist on this plane. The average human male walks around as if having to breathe is a chore he has been unfairly tasked with, his underdeveloped Y chromosome having left him with a lack of connection to life. You can often smell how much a man resents being here, how much he longs for the pre-consciousness slumber of the spirit womb, and this feature, which most men have due to their poor karma that has resulted in them being born male, is the most fundamental thing that women find unattractive in men. Not being bald, not being fat, not being weird, not being poor. It's the lack of life force that is so unshakably repulsive to women. Now, she's being a bit harsh here. That is kind of her brand, but there are a lot of grains of truth to take from this. I also shared this initial post and said that I regret to inform you there's some truth to this, although it is being taken to the extreme in the case of Luigi. But women are attracted to men who take action, and it is that very trait for which there is a tremendous vacuum in the current male population. Drive, ambition, energy, intention, self-actualization. Even when carried out in negative ways, women cannot help but be attracted to it. I've said this on the show before. I've talked about it in terms of dating. I've given it as advice to men in the past, but I think that it is one of the most fundamental truths out there. And I really do think if I had to boil down the issues women are having with modern men, that's at least top 3 among them. I experienced it myself in dating. Every single man I met until my husband just could not keep up with me, couldn't keep up work ethic wise, ambition wise, drive wise, energy wise, and it was a huge turnoff. I will add one other analysis that I actually happened to listen to about a month ago, but is relevant here. I was listening to ContraPoint's newest video on Twilight. It's about a 3-hour video, but it's a great deep dive. It's very thick with philosophy. It's actually quite dense. But she talked about this phenomenon in terms of Bella being attracted to Edward, who is a vampire, who has quite the body list. She expanded that out into women's attraction to criminals and others throughout history. And she made the point that women are often attracted to male power and seek to embody it through their attachments to men, which I think also does ring true for some of these people. They are attracted to that action, that power that it can produce within men. And because women are physically incapable of assuming that same kind of power, I think there can often be an attraction to them, to men who are capable of seizing the day, who are capable of dealing with the bad guy in ways that they are not. And that's why if you think about a lot of the villains in pop culture that women have had crushes on, they are bad to other bad people, but good to women and people who mean no harm. Think of not only Edward, but characters like Dexter. But because of the vacuum of action among the male population, women are often left thirsting even for the kinds of men who channel it negatively. And I think this is really interesting. One of my followers on Twitter responded to me and said, it's called executive dysfunction, and my generation of men is where it started to reach epidemic levels. This guy had absolutely zero executive dysfunction issues, quite the opposite. And this sent me spiraling because I agree. So I started digging into what would cause a decrease in executive dysfunction. And the top issues are things like mental health issues and brain injuries, which makes sense, but those causes would only explain an erosion at an individual level, not at the societal level we are seeing right now. But then as I scrolled and I kept researching, I came across addiction as another cause, and that really got my wheels turning. So I dug in and started looking at what kinds of addictions men could be getting en masse that could be causing an erosion of this functionality across society. And do you know what I came across? Adult entertainment. I don't know what I'm allowed to say here on YouTube, but read the screenshot. Research suggests that these kinds of addictions can potentially contribute to executive dysfunction, as excessive corn use can impair the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for executive functions like decision-making, impulse control, and planning, leading to difficulties in these areas. And I'll add to that, because I kept going, gambling also has similar effects, as do alcohol and other substance abuse disorders, but those I think are pretty equally common amongst women. So I rest my case, and I am laying the blame for this on predominantly corn and gambling. Now, inevitably, there was the whiner who came into my comments in the midst of this actually very interesting discussion I was having with many other men who were interested in this discourse, giving the old, like, why are you mean to men? Why are you coming for men? I'm not coming for men. The fact is, a lot of men need to get their acts in society. If I'm not talking about you, don't make it about you. But addressing these problems at hand is not taking a shot at men. It is refusing to coddle them, and it's naming their issues that they need to focus on. But that is a form of tough love, okay? People who actually want better for you, who want better for you in society, will be calling these things out. They won't just be patting you on the back and telling you you're a victim and telling you that your problems are everybody else's fault. No, they're going to be giving you the recipe to actually fix your own life. As this guy pointed out in response to him as well, there are accomplished, respectable men, and then there are a lot of wet noodle males who command no respect. It's beyond me why you would insist on white knighting for men as a whole instead of agreeing that the losers ought to shape up. It makes me think you're in that group if you can't help running to the rescue. And I think this is unquestionably true. The vast majority of men, I don't think, are in this camp. I think there's a lot of good men out there. I think there are a lot of men who are thriving, who have got it figured out. I think many of them have gotten settled down and are married because they get swiped up quickly. But when we talk about the younger generations of men, the men who are still single, the men who are wrapped up in these online comment sections, a lot of them are not doing well. And to ignore that is not kind, it's not generous, it's not going to help them, it's not pro-male. All right, guys, so there you have it. In conclusion, guys, go to the gym and take some action in your life. Non-violent action, please. I promise that women will notice and like it. And secondarily, be wary of anything police and the media tell you and avoid people who grave dance over strangers' demise. I hope we all learned something here today. All right, guys, I hope you liked this episode. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you've not already, and if you want even more content, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok.